Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Dimitri Johnson, and you're listening to MMALatestNews.com.
It's time to roll, baby.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to MMA Latest. We're here for, obviously, Derek Brunson versus Edmen Shahbazyan. We've got the fights coming up. We're now down to just the 9-fight card now after Gerald unfortunately tested positive. I'm here with Jay and Reese. Jay, how's your weekend been?
So far, so good. Can't complain. Pretty standard now at this point. Lots of fights, so this keeps me entertained.
Obviously, yeah, we've gone from a 15-fight card, which was a record equaling. Now we're down to what was going to be 10, but now down to 9. Reese, how excited are you for this card? Obviously, we're coming off a Fight Island hangover. This one seems to be a bit more on the down low.
It is a bit. I think we've got it's a massive middleweight fight, especially for Edmen. This is his coming out party, effectively. It's a shame it's only 3 rounds, but I think hopefully we don't get to the end of the 3 rounds and we don't all sit here and go, could have done with 2 more rounds of that, because that's obviously not ideal. But it should be a good fight, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how Edmen can deal with such a step up in competition.
Yeah, obviously, he's coming in undefeated, 11-0. Derek Brunson is one of those fighters. He's the elite of the middleweights, but he's almost become a gatekeeper. He's someone who always sticks between that 5th and 7th rank. He comes in at number 8. Only a loss to the elite in Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, Yoel Romero. Jay. So, a win for Edmen here would really push him up the rankings. They're both 8th and 9th, respectively.
Yeah, it would to an extent. Like we spoke about it the other day when we done the preview. We mentioned how this is essentially like the gatekeeper status for Derek Brunson, which is it seems harsh, but I don't even know if he beats Shahbazyan, if that does for him. Initially, I thought this could give him potentially another run towards the top half of the division. I don't see that being the case, even if he does beat him. Shahbazyan, like Reece said, it's potentially his coming out party. You look at the people that Brunson has fought, Anderson Silva, like you said, Romero, Jacare, some big guys, and has a win over Lyoto Machida himself. So it's a tricky one. If you can get a big win, hopefully it's enough for him to stay consistent, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, obviously, as you said, this is a 3-round main event. Sometimes you get fights that 5-round fights where you go, I wish that was just 3 rounds, or you get the opposite where you get 3-round fights and you want an extra 2. But I like the idea of some 3-round main events. Obviously, the last one, I believe it was Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva, and that was perfect for a 3-round main event. Had that been an extra 2 rounds, Anderson's aging, it probably wouldn't have been as good as contest. And equally so, for 3 rounds, you got an extra 10 minutes of gas tank almost to use up, really, Reese.
Yeah, you have. Obviously, they haven't been preparing for that 5-round fight, so they've been preparing for about 15 minutes of explosiveness, if you want. So I think in terms of a fight, it's going to be interesting, as you said, with Derek kind of effectively being a gatekeeper. But Derek's been in there with the best, and Edmen hasn't really been in there with anyone noticeable yet. To go from Brad Tavares to Derek Brunson is a big jump up in quality. Yeah. And as I said at the start, like this is his chance to just prove how good he really is. I kind of liken it to Sean O'Malley when obviously Malley's fighting Chito Vera. It's going to be Sean O'Malley's chance and it's Edmen's chance. Let's just see how good this guy actually is and see if he can break that record of the youngest UFC world champion.
Yeah, do you think the fact that he is only 22 years old, whether he wins or loses tonight, obviously he's got a long career ahead of him still. So, a loss could almost do him as good as it could have win. Obviously, he'd learned a lot, and obviously it's probably a good point for the fans to see where he's at. But again, a win would push him into that top tier of the middleweight. So you're looking at Darren Tills, Jack Hermanson, Owen Gastelum, etc. But obviously at the top, and we'll talk about this a little later, it's almost the division stacked, but everyone's got to face each other in that top 6. So you could be out a little while.
Yeah, and like beating Derek Brunson, it will only give him a further step up in competition, and ultimately that's all you could want. You don't really want an easy ride to the title, and especially with a little goal in mind of wanting to be the youngest UFC champion. like you said, it's a division full of killers once you get to that top 10, top 5. You know, we were going to touch on it a little later on, but there's a potential number 1 contender fight coming up soon as well. Like, and so, like I said to you the other day, Mitch, I don't think he will get the opportunity to be the youngest, only because there's so many killers right in front of him. Slow and steady pace, I think, would be ideal for Shahbazyan.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? That we've got these young guns coming in. The Chase Hoopers, Macy Barbara herself was one to be touted to be almost the one to break John Jones's record. It seems like that's the next record the UFC almost pushing as a narrative. Who could be the next youngest champion and really build on that? But as you said, obviously Edmen turns 23 in November, so that gives him 13 months really to really push on to that. And as you said, the amount of fights that are coming up in that middleweight division is unlikely that we're going to see him in a title shot within the next 12 to 13 months, really.
I think he can get to that title shot relatively quickly because obviously we've got Whittaker and Cannonier, which we'll touch on later, but Darren Till's going to be out for at least 6 weeks, but it's going to be realistically like 4 months probably before we probably see him back in towards the end of the year. So if Edmen goes in and wins, he's kind of doesn't have a fight then, and you've got obviously I think Yoel Romero is fighting Uriah Hall in August, I think.
It's coming up.
And then the only 2 people that leaves left if Edmen wins tonight is Kelvin Gastelum and then Jack Hermansson. Obviously, Till's been campaigning today on social media for that Hermansson fight, but after Hermansson destroyed Kelvin Gastelum so quickly, Hermansson's fresh. If Edmen wins tonight, as quick as he's been winning in the UFC, he'll be fresh. Those 2 face off. He beats Hermansson. It's definitely a lot of hypotheticals, but I can see him fighting for the title before his 23rd birthday. But as Jay said, he's gonna have to really, really put on a few great performances to get there.
Do you not think, Reese, that like Shahbazyan, if he fights Jack Hermansson, do you not think it would be wiser to keep them 2 separate? There are 2 potential prospects in the division coming up. Do you not think it's better to let them 2 have their own paths and eventually meet further down the line? Whereas Kelvin Gastelum, who just got defeated by Hermansson, surely that would be a next obvious fight for Shahbazyan if he wins tonight.
Yeah, I think so. But as Mitch said, I think the UFC are trying to push that narrative now of becoming the youngest UFC champion. So I think it would be sensible to take the route that Dana's taken with Sean O'Malley, for example, and casually building him up and veteran, and now he's facing a genuine top 10 guy.
Mm-hmm.
If Edmen beats Brunson tonight, once again, it is another massive step up to Kelvin Gastelum. But I was actually, I wouldn't say surprised, but I forgot just how big Edmen is. Because Brunson's quite a fairly sized middleweight, but Edmen on the scales yesterday, when they were facing off, is actually very, very big, and he hasn't really had a chance to impose his size. He's kind of got a sort of weird style, but going forward, sensible. Yeah, it probably is best to keep them apart. As you said, they're 2 young stars, and they're both peaking at exactly the right time.
Mm-hmm.
But if the UFC want to create that narrative of the youngest UFC champion, then I don't think that's going to put. I don't think anything's going to stop that, and I think Dana White will just put him in there.
Yeah, I hear you.
I was thinking that you just mentioned Sean O'Malley there. Do you think they could also maybe push the narrative of one of those becoming the first Contender Series champion? Obviously, they're both the alumni.
I think they would like to. I mean, you've got it with the Ultimate Fighter. I think that's what he wants. Like, it's like do you remember the Dana White looking for a fight show? It's like they've done away with that completely. Because I remember when that came around, they were looking for the next, champion from there. I don't know. It looks like Dana's put all his attention into this Contender Series. I'd say they will push for that pretty soon.
Definitely. You've seen, as you say, with looking with a fight, that's what we saw the Mickey Swords and Paige North cuts who, were touted for the next big things. And, that was a great series. But the Contender Series seems to be, especially for Dana, the number 1 way to get into the UFC and rebuild your brand. We've seen, so many of them. Even Gilbert Burns' brother, Herbert Burns, was on that event as well. And it seems at the moment also, we've seen the likes of I mentioned there Gilbert Burns and obviously Chimaev. If you stay active, say if Edmund wins tonight and comes back in a month, that could excel him to a title shot because he's had 2 fights in quick succession. But we'll have a quick look at the teletype. As you said, it is very close. Edmund is 6'2", a longer reach, shorter leg reach. So would you expect Derek Brunson to the kickboxing bout, perhaps, just to keep it at range?
I think it'd be sensible to. I don't think you want to. I don't think you want to stand with Edmen. I think Edmen has proven that in his fight so far, especially against Brad Tavares. He kind of just utilised every skill that he had. But at the same time, Derek Brunson was. I go back to the Adesanya fight, and he was so emotionally invested in that fight, and he paid for it because he wanted to stand and he wanted to brawl with such an elite striker like Israel. So I think it would be sensible for Derek to utilise his whole game because Edmund's last 3 fights haven't gone past 2.5 minutes. So you've got to try and take him into deep waters and somewhere that he's never been before.
Yeah, exactly. And on reflection, I remember seeing Israel Adesanya versus Derek Brunson, and you see Israel Adesanya piece him up, and you can almost put a flag on that then to say, oh, that's when Adesanya really blew up and then pushed his title push and he became the champion. So a win for Edmund could equally be the same for him.
Yeah, it could. But I just think there was that little bit something special with Izzy. I think that's what he possesses, and that's what led him ultimately to being a champion. I don't think Shahbazyan has that just yet. I'm not saying he doesn't or he can't be a champion. I think, certainly his striking ability is as good as anybody's that I've seen in the middleweight division. He just needs more opportunities to showcase that. And the more he gets to do that against the higher level opposition, and like Bree said, 2 minutes, 30 seconds or something?
Mm-hmm.
If he's going in and doing that against the top dogs in the middleweight division, he certainly will be a champion. So, but I just don't think it's the Derek Brunson. I don't think it's the Derek Brunson path to become a champion. Like, what happens if Brunson beats him tonight? Ultimately, it's not a bad thing. He's young, time's on his side, he can learn. But what happens to him now? This is what I hate about over pushing people. Instead of just taking it at a steady pace. If he loses tonight, that hype just goes, and then he opens the main card, or he's opens a fight night. Who knows? He's probably not as well thought of as once was.
But I think we've saw it, haven't we, with Darren Till? Like, Dana pushed Darren Till. He went from fighting Cowboy, who was, on the peripheries of that top 15, and then he went straight to fight Wonderboy, which was at the time a massive jump up, and he won the fight whether you think he did or he didn't. So you do have to be careful, and I think Dana's learned his lesson from that. As I said earlier with Sean O'Malley, he's pushing him slowly. I like to think Dana's learned from that, and as I said, it is a bit of a step up from Brad Tavares to Derek Brunson, but
yeah, absolutely,
it's one of them where unless you put them in there, you don't know how good they are. And he does have age on his side. He's only 22, and he can afford a loss. I guess I kind of liken it to like the Darren Till, Robert Whittaker situation. Like, even though they're sort of the same age, the pair of them, like Whittaker's at like the top of his game, and he's been at the top for so long. Whereas Darren Till is, despite coming up, obviously a division, he's still on the rise. He can afford to have a couple of losses here and there. Where Robert Whittaker probably couldn't afford to have a couple of losses. And I think it's the same with Edmen. Edmen can afford to lose his next 2-3. He's got so many years left in the tank. And this is a big chance for him. And hopefully he can grasp it and make a statement at the same time.
Yeah, I do feel for him in a sense. But, I feel for Derek Brunson, actually. Because obviously a lot of the build-up for this week has been pushed ahead. And, we've seen the clips of him training with Ronda Rousey being her almost punching bag at 15 years of age. And the fact that he has that experience of training with such an elite champion in Ronda Rousey, someone who was able to experience the media at his best and at his worst. That's left him in just as good a stead. And I think, should he lose tonight against Derek Brunson, I feel like Brunson would almost be pushed off as Edmund's too young rather than Brunson's too good. And we'll probably look at this fight, if he goes and wins goes and bounce back from that with a win, builds up a streak, we'd probably be looking like, oh, he learned so much from this Brunson fight. He did this, he did that. This was the making of him in like the almost second stage of his career. Whereas if Brunson wins, it's more like, oh, he's just got more experience than the kid.
Yeah, but it's also not just that. Like, people can't just put it down to experience. You have to understand, Derek Brunson is a very, very good fighter. Like, there's no two ways about it. He can go. Like you said, the only people that has beaten him, like Whittaker beat him, former champion. Anderson Silva, former champion. Yoel Romero, okay, fought for the title 2-3 times. Adesanya, current champion. He's losing to like the elite.
The elite, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and even that he's beaten the former light heavyweight champion in Lyoto Machida. So trust me, like he's good enough to be there. So let's just hope. But I would like to see him get a win tonight, because I hate seeing fighters in that kind of gatekeeper role. It's just, I think it's a negative look on you. Like, this is only how good you are, and that's it. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't like that term.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and as you said to Reese, fighters getting pushed too much. I think the litmus paper really is Khamzat Chimaev. Obviously, we've seen him fight twice in 10 days, and I know people are already asking for him to be ranked, looking at top 10 opponents for him already. And I think he's the one that we need to look at, whether we see him. Obviously, if he fights again next week or two, he might find himself in the ranks, as whether he gets put into a fight he doesn't need yet. He needs to be bled in for the next probably 3 or 4 months, and then 2021. At the start of it, we can really see him take on the Wonder Boy or someone like that who's in that top 10.
Yeah, there's two. When it comes to Chimaev, I've got two heads on this. I've got one head is just like, let's just slowly progress him, take him through rankings, and the half of me is just like, why don't we just put him against Alexa Colby and just see how he gets on? Because from what we've saw so far, like, he's an absolute animal and he's a wrecking ball, and he hasn't like Reece McKee didn't land a strike, didn't even attempt to strike in that fight. Like, I'm trying to think of an impact that we saw from a debuting fighter. I don't think there's been as big as an impact as this guy's have. I don't think he has one. Like, it's 2 fights in 10 days and it's 2 wins in 10 days, and now he's fighting again in a couple of weeks, and I can't imagine there's a plethora of fighters waiting to sign up to fight him.
Yeah, obviously he got an extra 100K in the bank for 10 days work as well, with his back-to-back bonuses. And I think Nick Pete put it perfectly. It was like, if you're getting a call from one of the matchmakers, they really hate you. Obviously, if you're picking up that phone and you ask your opponent is and it's Chimaev, you're throwing that phone out the window and going, no.
100%. 100%. You do not want to fight him at all. Why would you?
Yeah, I saw the ESPN graphic, 192 strikes to 2 in 2 fights. And they didn't even go the full distance.
And that's at 2 weight classes as well. Let's not forget that. That's at 2 weight classes. That's fighting someone like John Phillips, who's been in the UFC for a while now, and his last performance was an incredible performance. He knocked his opponent out, and to go in there against John Phillips and to do what he did, and like Reece McKee, like I feel that he's going to get a lot of stick because Reece McKee is an absolute killer, and I really do hope we do see him in the UFC again, because unfortunately, he was just on the wrong side of a hype train, and I'm hoping that he does get given another chance and doesn't, like, with all due respect to Cage Warriors, let's stick with him in the UFC, because we've all been calling for him in the UFC for a couple of years now. So hopefully Dana gives him another chance. Yeah,
he's absolutely deserving of a spot in the UFC, and I was buzzing for him like the whole time, like in the lead up to this fight. But we kind of knew what he was up against. In terms of Chimaev, like I'm the exact same as you, Reese, in terms of like, right, slow and steady wins the race. And then we said this the other night, didn't we, Mitch? Like, what happens if you just put me in Mokaev? And that's exactly what I said. Why don't you just put me in Mokaev? But my only worry is, because even Dana, like you said the other night, Mitch, Dana was talking about how, maybe we could just put him in with Usman. Who knows? Like, don't just, like, you never know how it works out. Like, what if you got put in there with Usman, and Usman just stuffed everything and beat him up for 5 rounds? You don't just want to kill a star before you've like even made him, basically. Do you know what I mean? I think Yeah, he's one. He's probably the only fighter where I went from, take your time, whatever. No, champion straight away. I want to see it all.
Exactly. Like, is there not like a small part of you that if you put him in against Colby, he's going to win?
There is a small part. There is.
That's the thing, and that's the impact that this guy's had. Like, he's got me thinking, like, Colby should destroy him because Colby is
exactly
levels ahead. But half of my brain is like, you put him with Colby, he'll win.
Yeah, like I think if you came back in 3 years' time, I think he runs the welterweight division, Chimaev.
Yeah.
But if you just put him with Colby now, I'm like, nah. Like I remember Brendan Schaub was on the. I'm gonna quote Brendan Schaub here, but he was doing his own podcast the night McGregor fought Mendes, and he just cursed the UFC out during the fight for ruining the Golden Boy. When it fed McGregor to the wrestler. It's essentially that. If you put Chimaev in there, I'm not like who knows if it's too soon. I don't even think he knows. I don't know. I'm confused. He's one of those that just gives you a headache.
That's what I mean. That's the impact he's had. We're all sitting here questioning, like, if we put him with Colby, is he going to win? Is he going to win against the likes of Leon Edwards? I mean, Leon Edwards is calling out for a fight. Like,
yeah, and then he goes up to middleweight and smothers Adesanya. Like, what the
the scenarios have just been playing and playing and playing for like a week now.
What? She's got to go on a 3-fight losing streak now or something.
Yeah, probably. I won't put it. Yeah, it's this, like, as I said, like, I don't think I've saw an impact like this from anyone. Like, he was there was like, he went from this virtual unknown fighter and only I don't like using like hardcore MMA fans, but only the hardcore MMA fans knew about him, and now he's like completely on, like, he's on the front pages of everything, and everyone's talking about him. And as Mitch said, like, aside from the show money that he's got, he's already earned 100K. That's life-changing money for someone who is so young in his MMA career. Well, not in his MMA career, but in his UFC career. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Reece McKee deserves plaudits himself as well, because he would have seen Chimaev on that Wednesday card and then got the call being like, "Oh, do you want to make a UFC debut against this guy?" And he took the call. I think that's just as gutsy as anything, and hopefully that will serve him well in Dana's eyes, and hopefully we see him again this year. But for Chimaev, obviously, he started going at everyone. He's gone at McGregor. He's gone at tweets against Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, and even there, you're thinking, even against McGregor, you're thinking he could go in there and maul McGregor. But you can equally go the other way. And you're like, what's this guy created?
This guy has created, is split my head in half, and that's never happened before. Like, all logic would say that if he goes in against Conor would just pick him apart.
Yeah,
without left hand. Wipe the floor of him. But then there's like 50% of me that's like, as you just said, like, he goes in and just Khabibs him. Takes him to the ground and just pummels him for like 15 minutes if you wanted to. It's so weird and it's so frustrating, but amazing at the same time to have this sort of thought process from a fighter.
Yeah, he epitomizes, he makes it factual that MMA math doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can't put him up an opponent and say he's guaranteed a loss or guaranteed a win, which is absolutely. He's scary, and the fact that he has done it in 2 divisions already, it means he can bounce between the two, and he's probably got room maybe to go to light heavyweight if he really wants to, because he's still only young, isn't he? He could go
and beat John Jones.
Right, but here's the question of who is a suitable opponent for him next?
It's hard because John Phillips wasn't ranked at middleweight, so you obviously can't only class that, and obviously Reece McKee was making his debut, so like.
Brian Barber, maybe someone like that. He's just on the cusp of that welterweight division.
Maybe you look at someone like Yancy Medeiros. Obviously, he's been down at 55 recently, but I think he's more suited to that 170. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think you put him, like with someone, maybe the Austrian Wonder Boy. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try. But someone like that, let's just see how he gets on. Let's just see if the hype's there and it's worth it. I'm sorry, but like, I'm trying to be level-headed, but I can't. Let's just chuck him in there and let's see if he's going to smash his people that he says he's going to smash.
Definitely. We'll move on now. Obviously, one fighter that was at UFC Fight was Modestus, of course, and obviously everyone spoke to him, and that interview's going to come out tomorrow around 2-3 p.m. So make sure to subscribe to that. But we've got a clip for just to tease you guys, really.
Dreaming about this moment for ages, so everything just felt normal, felt natural. Even when I was walking out to the octagon and stuff like that, and when I stepped on that UFC can. Like it's felt like the natural next progression. What I've been waiting for, what I've been working for. You know, having my name called out by Bruce Buffer. These are all things that I visualized and thought in my head before the fight and before this whole. You know, this is now the next part of the journey, and this is what I've been wanting. So, you know, it was even more so of an adrenaline rush, but less so of me being nervous. It's more I need to go out and show myself, and it just felt, like I said, it just felt way more natural. And it just makes me really, really looking forward to the next part of the journey.
So yes, that'll be out tomorrow, 3 p.m. on the MMA Latest YouTube channel. But we'll move on now to the Flyweight Division. Of course, we've got Joanne Calderwood coming in against Jennifer Maia. Reese, I get your opinion on this first. High risk, low reward for Joanne Calderwood in this one tonight.
Yeah, she was obviously meant to face a champion, and to kind of sit there and go, no, I'm going to take a massive risk in fighting someone like Jennifer Maia, who obviously is coming off that loss to Duke Hagen, I think it was, at 244. Yeah. If I'm right, I think Maia's missed weight for the last 2 fights. Obviously, she didn't miss weight for this one, so that's good. So that will really help if she does win. But massive props to JoJo to take this fight when she could have just waited for Valentina. And look, if JoJo wins this, I think she definitely cements herself without doubt as that #1 contender for the belt.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, me and Jay were talking about it on the previous end that there's no one in that division with a 2-fight win streak at the moment that's a contender at least. Now, see, Valentina's made defense of the title, and she's so clearly #1. But Jay, a win for JoJo does give her a 2-fight win streak, I believe. But it's neither here nor there in that division.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say other than everything we kind of spoke on the other night, because it just keeps coming back to the same thing. Just the lack of consistency in the division makes it hard to cement a true #1 contender. And like we've already talked about Calderwood coming in and fighting for the title on a 1-fight win streak. So surely if she wins the second, which she has to be, doesn't she? Logic says, it's crazy right now. Like, I just think that the division is really in need of fresh blood. I think in the division, someone to come in and really spark it up, other than Valentina Shevchenko. She's just the dominant champion. She needs a challenger that we can, believe has a chance against her. I just don't think we've had that yet. The only person we've had that with Shevchenko is Amanda Nunes at bantamweight. So it's just a tricky one. I think, maybe if people just got a little bit more consistent, especially while Valentina has her time off, we'd be able to get behind some of these fighters who look to take a step towards the champion.
Yeah, definitely. I think, unfortunately for the division, we're looking more outside the division, whether it's Valentina goes up and faces Nunes once more for the trilogy. Obviously, we had Yoni and Jacek fight for the flyweight title. That was probably the most competitive fight we've seen, or most definitely the most competitive fight we've seen at flyweight with Valentina. But even then, Valentina, dispatched her quite comfortably in that fight. You look at the likes of maybe Amanda Ribas, Cynthia Calvillo's moved up. So, and obviously, Welly Zhang, the strawweight champion, you could see a super fight there, perhaps. And actually, Jessica Andrade moved up to the flyweight division.
Jessica Andrade is fighting Jessica Rai.
God.
A former strawweight champion there, should she get a win against Jessica Rai like Calvillo did, that'll shoot her up the rankings, and having been a former champion probably puts her in the pole spot really for that title shot.
It does, and I think that the addition of Calvillo and the addition of Jessica Andrade now, obviously we don't know if that's a permanent move up to 25, but maybe that is the sort of new blood that we need. But look, at the end of the day, Valentina is just too good, and I don't see anyone in that 125 division who is going to come close to challenging her at all. The only, as Jay said, the only fight that is a challenge, so to say, is the Amanda Nunes fight. I don't see. I even think she beats everyone in the bantamweight division apart from maybe Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, I would agree. She's that good. It's like I
She's
said.
that
Like, I said this the other night. I feel like she kind of like an Anderson Silva between like 2005 to 2010, when you're matched up against her. Like you're basically already beat before you get in there. She is literally that good. Like it will take Valentina to kind of like mentally check out in order for you to have a chance of winning.
Yeah.
She's just elite. Like, and again, like it's debatable that she beat Amanda Nunes the second time around. So I don't know. No one's gonna come close for a long time, I don't think.
Yeah, of course. I'm interested to see how that sibling rivalry is with Antonina. Obviously, Antonina is the older sibling. It's not, being an older sibling myself, it's always, it's nice seeing a younger sibling do well. But it's almost bittersweet being like, you can't be beating me at all these things. But you got Valentina absolutely destroying that division. It'd be interesting to see what the training sessions are between the two, and secondly what it was like them two growing up just fighting each other.
Well, yeah, because like the thing is with like Antonina is obviously like she obviously lost to Chukagian and she, kind of was showing at there's levels to the sport in that fight. But and it's a big if, that she ever makes her way to the title, like what happens then? Like,
well, I think
is it
not fighting each other? But it's like, what do you do then?
But then at the same time, like, Antonina's sacrificing her career for the sake of a sister, and it's like it's such a tough situation for them both to be in because, as you said, like they're sisters, they don't want to fight each other, but they do in training. I imagine they spar a hell of a lot in training, especially with all the lockdown and stuff like that. I imagine that they were the only two people who were available ready to spar. So
I think it's just different. Go ahead, go on. I'll let you finish. Sorry.
I was just going to say that like every flyweight is just very unlucky at the moment that they're such, and you've got like 1 through to 15, and then you've got Valentina who's so far up, and and at the same time as well, it's a shame for Valentina that she's got someone like Amanda Nunes who's just better than her, because if Amanda Nunes weren't round, Valentina is by far the greatest women's fighter on the planet.
Yeah,
and that's why those two fights with Amanda Nunes were so good and so competitive. And I think we really did see the two best women on the planet, and I think it's going to be a while before anyone breaks that mold.
Yeah. I was going to say, Weili Zhang could be that for the strawweight division, but then again, I even think the strawweight division has more possibility of seeing a champion switch over before we see the bantamweight and the flyweight champion switch over.
100%. 100%.
It's crazy. But we'll look at the teletape. JoJo 2.0, maybe 3.0 now. Obviously, of course, against Jennifer Maia, who has got an inch reach of height advantage. Reach advantages towards Joanne Calderwood, of course, and of course, you've got half-inch leg reach. Guys, how have you seen this one going?
Being from the UK, I'm obviously rooting for JoJo. JoJo 2.0, as we've said, she's come back after that. After the loss to Cynthia, she really come back and she really has improved. And obviously, she'd come up against Chukagian, and Chukagian is very, very, very good. But I think that bias aside, I think that JoJo will win. I think that she needs to use the pressure that she's so good at. She's a very, very, I'm trying to think of the word, but she's a very in-your-face fighter, and she's very messy, but she's effective with it as well. And I think that's what she needs to bring that to Jennifer. Jennifer is a slow starter at times, and it's quite clear that Jennifer wants to take it to the ground. She wants to, ground and pound and submit her. So I think if JoJo can pressure her, it's a smaller cage. Don't forget, we're back in that smaller cage now. So if JoJo can push her against the cage and really put a pressure on, and I think it could be an easy night for JoJo. But if Jennifer gets to the ground, then it's going to be a long night for Joanne as well. So it could go either way, but I'm leaning towards JoJo.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be nice to see Scotland and obviously the UK get its first females MMA champion. And I think, the fact that she is pretty good on the ground, as you say, we've seen her in the build-up doing creating Nate Diaz's famous speech. The fact that she's so softly spoken, but she's such an animal and a savage inside the cage. It quite doesn't add up, does it? The way she looks all, you'd almost expect to walk past the shop and just, she's a sweet thing, but she's an absolute savage in the cage.
It reminds me a lot of Hannah Cyphers as well. Hannah Cyphers looks so innocent, looks like she wouldn't hurt a fly. And I think it's also the same with Carolina Kolbakevich as well. Roxanne Modafferi is another one, yeah. But like the way they just carry themselves outside of a cage, the model, professional, everything. But then as soon as they get into the cage, a switch is just flicked and they just turn it on. And you know, I think that's what we all love about the sport is it's the unknown. And for someone who hasn't watched the sport before, if they were to see the likes of JoJo and Hannah Cyphers and stuff like that, they'd think, how on earth are you in the premier MMA organization? So I think it's refreshing instead of having someone walk around like they own the place.
100%. We'll take a look at the rankings quickly. You know, they're right on the edge. Jennifer Maia in number 6, of course. Jessica Rai felt quite. She had quite a big fall after that loss to Cynthia Caldia. Chikagan probably should this fight either one of them get injured or doesn't look too impressive in this fight. I'd imagine Captain Chikagan could get the rematch, but again, she gave Valentina Shevchenko no issues whatsoever. It's a difficult one to do.
I think, and I don't even know why I'm saying this, but like, if that were to be the case, where both fighters tonight didn't come out healthy enough to jump into a title fight, I couldn't imagine them doing back-to-back fights with Chikagian, considering how she got a beat down from Shevchenko. The only one, as you can see on that rankings then, is Calvillo or Lauren Murphy. You know, they're probably the next two in line outside of these two. And I just don't think any of them have enough for her. And these are very good fighters, keep in mind. We're not talking about, like, we're not classing these as, you know, past it for like fighters out of prime or anything like that. They're not. They're just not on Valentina's level. That's just the unfortunate part.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, you know, to just make this one almost last addition to Joanne Calderwood. I'd hope we get to see Joanne Calderwood versus Molly McCann, the English versus Scottish rivalry. Obviously, they're both flyweights. Unfortunately, Molly McCann did lose. But should you get back on the win column and start building herself up, I think that would be one hell of a fight for the fans. Obviously, especially being in the UK, I wish Bisping would have come into the UFC maybe 5 or 10 years, a bit later, and we could have seen Till versus Bisping, because that would have been, the Manchester-Liverpool rivalry would have been something special.
It would be good, but at the same time, like being from the UK, like I don't want to see our fighters face off against each other. Let's just let them get on with it. Let them fight if they need to fight, and then if needs be, then they'll fight. But as much as Molly McCann versus JoJo would be a good fight, it'd be a scrap. Like, my heart just can't take those fights. Like, I was so nervous of a Darren Till fight last week, and I'm so nervous for every fighter from the UK that fights in UFC or even outside the UFC. Like, I'm so nervous, and I just want them to do well. So, and that's why this Fight Island has been. It's been enjoyable, but it's been stressful because there's been so many Brits and so many Europeans with, like British affiliations in terms of gyms or whatever. It's been so nerve-wracking to watch all these guys fight, but at the same time, like a lot of them won, so it ended well. But let's just keep the Brits away from the Brits and then only fight when they need to.
Yeah, I think we had that as well when Joseph Duffy got signed to the UFC, and obviously everyone just thought, well, he's the guy who beat Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
So that was probably the only time I wanted to see it, just, second time round. But they were on just two completely different levels. It was never going to happen. But yeah, in terms of the Irish, like we don't have enough. No, not that we don't have the talent, but we just don't have enough talent in the UFC in order to have them compete against each other. Like if you had like guys from like Team Rhino, which was Neil Seary's gym, or Next Gen, or SPG, the talent is there. It's just they're going elsewhere. They're going to Bellator for the most part.
100%. Obviously, whilst we're on the discussion of UK fights, obviously Mohamed Mokaev made his brave debut today, guys. What did you make of it, Reese? Was you nervous for that one? Or, with Mokaev being Mokaev, was it, one and done before the fight even rang?
I mean, like Mohamed was like, obviously he's had such an distinguished amateur career. I think was he 23 and now, I think it was altogether.
Yeah.
And we were probably calling for it like as a group, especially in our group chat, we've been calling for his debut for a while. You know, we've had him on the show a couple of times, so there's that sort of affiliation there with him as well. So I was at work, so I didn't catch it, but from listening to what you guys said, and I think I saw snippets online, I think the fact that his opponent took it on such short notice was always going to go against him. So I think he was expected to win, and he did win. And you know, hopefully it's a start of a professional journey, which is going to, you know, inevitably lead to being a UFC champion. And I think that's what we all hope.
Definitely. You know, he turned 20 this week, and he's again one of those that are on the mission to, you know, he wants to become the youngest UFC champion. And I think he's probably got the best shot for it, being, you know, 23 now as an amateur. You know, he's got to do some work in the professional game, which I believe he will do. He looked very good today. He looked very strong. Obviously, Glenn McBee came in on short notice after even Mokaev had 6 opponents drop out within that 14 days. He went over to Stockholm, found that he didn't have an opponent on the build-up to fight week, of course. But Glenn McBee, of course, as you said, he didn't have a proper camp. He came in 3.4 kilograms overweight, which, you know, can be seen, you know, it is bad in the sport, but when you come in on such short notice, I think there's almost a bit of leniency towards it. But he looked good. But again, Mokaev put a professional performance in and didn't take too many unnecessary risks, which you can maybe see someone making their first professional bout.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been more intrigued and excited for 2 fighters with an 0-0 record.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, they were both making professional debuts. We knew what we were getting with Mo, but we didn't know exactly what we were getting with Glenn. But you know, him taking it at such short notice is always going to go against him. But you know, he's 1-0 now, and he's signed with an organisation like Brave, which is a fantastic first step. You know, I think I saw people like there was only like 2 or 3 people that were calling for the UFC and for his first fight. So it's never going to happen. Like, you've got to build yourself up. Whether that means he goes from Brave and he goes to Bellator, then he goes to UFC, or he goes Brave to Cage Warriors, and then obviously follows that path, which so many fighters have followed. Like, we got to remember, like, he's so young. He's got so many years ahead of him, and like with Edmen, like, I don't think Mo's got that mindset of becoming the youngest UFC champion. So, you know, that's not something he's got his mindset on. It's a case of it will happen when it happens, and whatever will be, will be. But I'm excited that he's finally made his debut, and hopefully we'll be seeing him in the UFC not too long.
Yeah, I hope we see him in probably 2 years. I hope he gets to 4 or 5 now as a professional before we see him in the UFC. Probably gets a shot in the Contender Series at that point, and then really builds his name off of that, perhaps.
Yeah, let's just hope he doesn't go for a takedown in the last 10 seconds.
That's
not going to end well, is it?
No. But you know, knowing him, he'd probably do the takedown in the first 10 seconds and just maul him for the next 3 rounds.
Yeah.
But who knows? But you know, I'm excited to see him. It's obviously the affiliation. There was no nerves that I got nervous seeing Ronan fight for PFL the first time and on the Contender Series because it was almost on such short notice. It was almost like it's announced that he's in the cage in Vegas. But with Mokaev, you know, we've seen this coming in terms of we know he's going to be turning professional at some point this year. I think he's expected to do another World Championships. Obviously, he's back-to-back IMAF World Champion. Went to Australia, became the Oceania Champion. But I was looking at him today. He's, you know, sometimes with wrestlers, you can see they've got a very strong wrestling standpoint, not a great striking standpoint when it comes to stand-up. But for someone of 20 years of age, he's got all bases pretty much covered the way he probably should be at this age.
Yeah, he does. Like, again, like something we touched on before, his wrestling, like, it's smothering, but it's also with a flair. Like, he likes to shot, not, I wouldn't say purposely, but he kind of shows off in the sense with his suplexes and his, you know, over the shoulder run, slam. You know, it's entertaining. It is fun to watch. That was one of the first things I remember when I first started watching mixed martial arts was Matt Hughes picking some dude up over the shoulder and just running across the cage and dropping him. You know, you see a lot of that with Mokaev, and then as well, like you said, his stand up is sharp. So there's a lot of things going in his favor at an early age, and he only has room to grow as well, and time on his side as well. So I'm sure he'll get that UFC contract as long as he keeps level-headed. That shouldn't be a problem.
No, he's definitely got that to be almost mindset in terms of he's very respectful, very down to earth, and it's almost he lets his fighting do the talking rather than doing the talking outside the octagon, where we see some other fighters maybe do that. And
I didn't like the thing. Sorry, Mitch. I didn't like the thing today. Yesterday though, with the weigh-in. I will say that, granted, like you said, it's a bad look on the sport when your opponent misses weight. But he was the 6th opponent to jump in. Probably no, I think he had 6 pullouts. So he's the 7th person to offer to take the fight on probably 2 or 3 days' notice. So granted, this guy probably Glenn McVeigh, he had little to no time at all to cut the weight. And again, not so much an excuse, but he did step up and give Mokaev the opportunity to compete tonight. So I didn't like how he kind of just labelled Glenn McVeigh as a disrespectful fighter, or, not a man, not making weight, look, sometimes these things happen. Like, time wasn't on his side. I'm sure if you got the full camp under his belt, things will be different. And I'm sure Mokaev will probably still come out with his hand raised, but, short notice, I wouldn't have looked into it the way he did, but it is what it is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the fact that he's come from that IMF route, where he's, as you were saying today, he makes championship weight 5 times a week, 4 or 5 times in a week for his competitions. And as you said, he does pick his opponents up. I know from IMAFs, I think it was last year, he was actually getting booed by the people in the arena for his quote unquote boring sort of game plan. And he just, he almost laughed it off, picked the guy up and just suplexed him just to almost give the crowd the FU.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that there was no crowd in Brave tonight probably worked in his favour, in the fact that it's a very similar sort of environment for him from where he's come up through IMAF. It's not like, I imagine if he'd walked out in front of a crowd of 5,000 to 6,000 people, we could have seen a very different, maybe not a different outcome, but a very different fight.
Maybe, but and this is where MMA fans are so fickle. And I hate when people just come out and say that a fight is boring. Like, at the end of the day, like, as a fighter, you go in there, your aim is to win that fight. You do whatever you have to do to win that fight. Like, it's obviously with Kamaru Usman, like, he got slated for his boring performance against Masvidal, but especially when the stakes are that high, it's one of the biggest fights that UFC could make, and it's on one of the biggest stages that we've had in a long, long time. As a champion, you're aiming to defend your belt. You do whatever you have to do. This goes for all fighters. You do what you have to do to win that fight. Forget about the fans. You've got to take them out of your mind. And as you said, maybe that's where some of these more wrestling orientated fighters, maybe it's good for them that there hasn't been any fans in the arena, because we do have the fans booing and wooing, and it's sometimes it gets frustrating, and it's just a case of, look, man, like, this is MMA. It's not like, if you want to see people punching each other's heads in, you go and watch boxing.
Yeah,
and I've learned after watching this sport now for so many years, I've learned to appreciate the grappling side of things and the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu. I've learned to appreciate it, and I can sit there and I can watch a full-blown grappling match, and I can appreciate the skill and just what a joy it is to watch. So I'm not a fan of the way fans just slate fighters for being boring. You do what you do to win the fight.
100%. Obviously, Kamaru Usman almost he's been done with the nickname of almost Stoosman, which I think is highly disrespectful for how much of an elite fighter he is. And we saw in that first round, he could, he almost attempted to strike with Masvidal. Masvidal was winning on the occasion. So had he continued, he would have lost a fight and 2 lost a championship. Which the only thing that matters is he walks out with that belt wrapped around his waist still.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's very smart on Usman's part to be like, hold on, I stand with this guy, I'm going to get knocked out, so therefore I'm going to change my game plan. Does that not show the quality to change up your game plan like that? I think it does.
Yeah, like, to me, the master of that was George St. Pierre.
Yeah.
He was a karate fighter who trained to be one of the best mixed martial arts wrestlers. Do you understand? Like, he never had a collegiate wrestling career or nothing like that, but he trained to become as great as he was. To me, GSP is the GOAT. You look at this fighter who's had the complete package. Yeah, every time, probably partially ever since he lost to Matt Serra, but he took the fight to the ground for the most part, beat people up. And like Reece said, like, if you can't get up, that's just too bad. That's on you, not him. You know, he's going to take the fight there. One thing I liked about GSP was sometimes he would take the fight to their opponent's strengths. Like I remember Josh Koscheck, you know, we done both with that. He jabbed his eye out and then wrestled him, you know. But then you have like dangerous strikers at the time, like Thiago Alves. Well, stay away from him. You're going to the ground. I'm just going to beat you up. If you can't get up, tough. If you will get up, I'm putting you back down. It's as simple as, you know. The name of the game is mixed martial arts. If you aren't equipped in all areas, that's on you.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we were speaking about it, I think, on the preview. You know, those times where, you know, GSP's era was almost, there was more specialists and less fighters that were good at everything. Whereas now it's flipped on its head. You have to be good at every single discipline. You can't just come in as a very good jiu-jitsu, almost a good grappler. You can't always just come in as a good striker. You have to have a good blend of all, unless you're Khabib Nurmagomedov, that kind of. Although even then again, the amount his stand-up game has improved over the years. It's been phenomenal. He's now one where you can see him probably having a good stand-up battle.
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of Khabib, like he put Conor down, although it was you know, as it was described, a lazy wrestler's overhand right. Like he still put him down, and like
the only person to do it as well.
Yeah, and like we talked about like the hype of Khamzat earlier, but in his two performances, what's he done? He's just been wrestling, and he's been keeping him down on the ground. But then people are like, oh my god, he's the next big thing. Like, and that's where, as I said, like they're fickle. Like we need to keep a realistic mind on it, and like let's just appreciate that we've got fighters like Conor who are so good on the feet, and then we've got fighters like Khabib who are so good on the ground, and then we've got other fighters out there like Tony Ferguson who's just good in every area.
Yeah.
Let's just appreciate that we've got a bit of everything rather than, you know, instead of just having one sort of fighter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. If you don't want to see people grappling on the ground, there's nothing worse when you're watching an event, an MMA event that is, and then you get, you know, they're down for 15 seconds and the crowd starts booing, or they're up against the cage for 15 seconds. And even then, you know, we haven't seen it as much. We've seen it once during Fight Island, but that then, you know, gives the referee the decision to stand them up. And he may do it prematurely because of the crowd that's getting on his back.
Yeah. I think we did see that in fight. I can't remember the name of the referee, but yeah, there was a fight where he really did stand them up very, very early, when he thought they weren't progressing. But I can't remember who it was.
It was Lazez's fight, wasn't it? Against
yes, it might. Yeah, I think it was actually. Yeah.
Every time they went to the ground, 5-10 seconds later, the referee would be like, "Stop! You're not doing enough work." Yeah. But you know, we did tease earlier the middleweight belt. We got confirmed. You know, Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier, 254. That card's going to be some card. Obviously, we know Khabib versus Justin Gaethje's main event in that. But my God, Robert Whittaker in a 3-round fight against Jared Cannonier, that could be fight of the night.
It is.
I see Jay flexing over there.
Yeah, that was lovely. Yeah, like it's the number one contender fight for me. Like I think Whittaker done enough beating Till to be next in line. You know, he's beaten a lot of good people, Robert Whittaker. Been the champion, had some good title defenses. I think that win over Till was enough to kind of just keep him next in line after Paulo Costa. So whoever wins this one, like Cannonier's just been on a tear. He's just been killing people since he dropped down to middleweight. So to me, I would probably more favour Whittaker getting the title shot off a win than if Cannonier won. You know, probably could probably come up with some reason to have him fight again. I don't know, but yeah, to me that's a great fight and could be an all-out war. Who knows?
100%. I think, you know, the fact that probably 5-6 years ago, you know, obviously Jared Cannonier came down from the heavyweight division, but Robert Whittaker was in the welterweight division. You know, if you went 5 years ago, that guy in the heavyweight division, like that guy in the welterweight division, in the division in between, in 5 years' time, you'd be like, oh, what are you talking about?
It's mad to, as you said, he's come down from heavyweight and he went heavyweight, light heavyweight, and he's come down to middleweight, and everyone over time was like, you're not going to make that weight. There's no way you're making that. But he looks so good at 85, and as Jay said, he's been on an absolute rampage at 85. You know, especially the win over Hermansson as well. That was kind of kind of a crossroads fight for both of them, because it was time to see who a genuine real contender was, and it was Jared. And obviously the win against Anderson Silva was a little bit. Some people aren't giving him credit for it because of obviously the leg injury that Anderson had, but you still got to go out there and you still got to beat whoever's in front of you, and he's done that. And he's done that like.
Tyron Woodley got that, Reese. That happened the same thing with Tyron Woodley when he kicked. What's his name? Knocked out Dan Hardy. We mentioned him earlier.
Carlos Condit.
Oh, Carlos Condit.
Yeah, so you absolutely have to take credit for that, I think.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you've got to beat whoever's standing across from you, and as long as you do that, you're going to be in the discussion. And as Jay said earlier, like, this is the number one contender fight. There's no doubt about it. I mean, for that fight, I would favour Whittaker. I was very impressed with Whittaker in the fight against Till. It was such a close fight, and even though it wasn't the 25 minutes of an absolute brawl that everyone wanted to see, it was, and I'm going to use the word again, it's technical recklessness. And I know Jay loves that, and I'm going to say it again because it was just so technical. It was so good to watch. It's a sort of fight I had like the hairs on my arms standing up because it was that good. They both knew at any moment each other could put each other's lights out, and they both respected each other. And I think I had Till winning it, but that might just be because he's from England, and I might have just maybe favoured him in a few rounds. But it was such a close fight, and as we mentioned earlier, the top 10 of that division, they're just killers. Mm-hmm. So whatever happens, whoever we see fight against whoever is going to be a great fight.
Definitely, and as you mentioned there, I think Darren Till, I gave it just about to Whittaker, but it was one of those fights where, I think you summed it up perfectly there. It was an incredible fight to watch, and you knew just one fighter zigs when they should have zagged, and they're ended up on the canvas knocked out. And neither one of them needed that in that point of their career. But I think the fact that Whittaker came back looked so good, and the fact that he's had a quick turnaround after what's quite been a strenuous, 18 to 24 months for him. The fact that he's gone right, I want to get back in there almost immediately, says a lot about where Whittaker's head's at, and he wants to be on hunt for that title once more.
I think that's all it comes down to. I think he wants that belt back. I think he was one of those who suffered the stress of being a champion, as well as other stuff going on in his personal life. There's different stories as to what went on, but we won't get into that. But he's had a lot on his plate, I would imagine. So I think just the hunger, to be champion again, and knowing he was the top dog, I think he really wants that back. I heard him say that, in terms of the Darren Till fight, it was the most nervous because obviously the first fight back after losing your title, you're the most nervous. I think once he got that out of the way, I think it was like, right, fine, this is okay again. Right now, I want that Izzy fight. I believe, I know he said it doesn't matter, he'll fight either or, but I believe he wants Adesanya again. I would, if Adesanya knocked me out, that's the fight I'm going for. I want to rectify that. So I would imagine that's why he's going for.
Yeah, definitely. I think,
not that I'd stand a chance after getting knocked out by Adesanya, but you get my point.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's no way you're signing that contract again.
No,
actually, no, I'm not. No.
Being almost biased towards Izzy, being an Adesanya fan, I'm hoping he gets past Paulo Costa. But I thought of Paulo Costa versus Whittaker potentially as a matchup, especially after seeing Whittaker versus Romero twice. I think Whittaker's fight IQ is a lot better than Paulo Costa, but that'd be a matchup that would be exciting to see anyhow.
Yeah, it definitely. We were, the Paulo Costa Romero fight was 15 minutes of pure carnage. It was a case of whoever lands, it's over. But yeah, as you said, I feel like when it comes to that Adesanya fight, it's actually one of the fights in terms of a Champions Defending belt. It's actually one of the fights I'm quite easily decided on. I think Adesanya's going to pick him apart. I think Costa's going to come and try rushing in, and I think he's just going to get picked apart. But yeah, as you said, Costa against Whittaker, Costa against Till, Romero against Till, even though Till doesn't want it. But there's so many good fights at the top of that division. We've got a good few years ahead of us in that division, and especially with Adesanya being so young as well. we're set.
I just don't want Yoel Romero to ever retire. I just watch
No.
him fight 10 times out of 10. I don't care. I get it right. Even his last fight with Izzy wasn't great. I don't care. I want to see him in title fights every single fight. I love him. Like you just don't know what you're gonna get, and more often than not, you tend to get a beatdown. Like you look at, fair enough. Like Whittaker when he fought Romero, it's like he won the contest, but ultimately Romero was the one who won the battle, because I felt like the effects were more so on Whittaker's part, and then he went straight in against Adesanya and got put straight out. Like, how many people have said it? When you fight Yoel Romero, he changes people. He just hits that. Yeah, the only person to withstand it so good was Costa. Like, I believe Costa would have been out there if that fight had been 2 minutes longer.
Yeah,
like, here's another potential fight you could see again down the line. Like, so many people in the middleweight division that you could have fight each other that we could be completely entertained by.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what Romero and Uriah Hall does. Obviously, if Uriah Hall beats Romero, then that almost throws another stick into the fire. But I think you put there Till versus Paulo Costa, and that has a special sort of thing towards it, because obviously Till can just speak shit to Paulo Costa in Portuguese. Do it in Brazil. It'd be perfect. Do it in Brazil.
Yeah, the Twitter game would be
so many of those matchups. Like, you could come to be named, I think we could both sit here and come to be named 10 matchups in that top 10.
Yeah.
We'd be like, yeah, I want that one. I want to see that. I want to see that. I want to see that. I want to see that.
And then tonight you could also have Shahbazyan in there.
Exactly, yeah. He wins, and then, I think the biggest loser of this middleweight, these middleweight fights is obviously Kelvin Gastelum. He's on that skid now with 3 fights, and it's such a tough place for him to go. But I think if Edmen wins tonight, I'd personally put Edmen against someone like Kelvin.
Yeah, unfortunately for now, Kelvin's just that kid sitting out in the rain, isn't he? Looking in the window.
Yeah.
Everyone's having fun.
Yeah.
He's walking around like Pablo Escobar in Narcos, just looking around.
I like it.
Yeah, it's definitely. I feel sorry for him, but
do you remember when he done the whole, like, he walked around with the title?
Was that
all that big shtick?
Whose belt was that?
So who knows that was, I think. Yeah.
In the build-up to a title challenge, and it all went wrong for him. Maybe too.
Yeah, he hasn't won a fight since. God bless him.
That's what's mad about Gastelum, is that everyone seems to forget, and I forget as well, is that he was obviously meant to fight Whittaker, and that fight got pulled, and how different that title pitch could have been. Obviously, Adesanya beat Gastelum either way, so maybe it wouldn't have mattered. But if Gastelum had beat Whittaker, would we have saw Whittaker Adesanya? Like, there's so many questions, and that's what's so great about this sport, is it's the unknown. Yeah. Any point things can change. Like we saw tonight. Like, we're an hour away from the prelims kicking off, and we've already lost a fight within an hour. So anything can happen at any time, and I think that's what we all love for sport so much.
Is Maia not going to jump in now?
Who's there? Yeah, well, 205. Might as well. That's 3 different weight classes. 3 finishes. Matching Conor McGregor's record. 3 finishes in 3 different weight classes. Why not? Let's do it.
I think they actually even called Conor out on that. I think it's been done before in 3 weight classes. It's just those specific weight classes. And I think that kind of had Conor feeling like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Not that important.
Stop beefing up to 185.
Yeah.
Got to go all over again. No, I think, it's interesting. Go back to Maia. It's interesting, the fact they came with that story saying he flew over to Ireland to go get Conor McGregor, but wasn't allowed past security. Like, that's one hell of a story. Like, we think about how angry McGregor was flying over to New York to get to obviously CQB with 223, but that's on similar levels. To get on, I don't know, was he in Ireland? But obviously he got to the airport. But to get on a flight to another country just to see one guy is, it shows the mentality of the guy.
What did he do? Do you believe? I don't believe that personally.
Yeah. I struggle to. Yeah.
There's no way. No one even knew who he was then. You have to remember that. You know, so it's not like he's being personally denied for coming to get Conor McGregor. So
Security
unless
probably thought he was a fan.
I don't know. I'm not buying that one. I get it. He wants to fight him, and he finds Conor as disrespectful. That's fair. You know, you're entitled to your opinion. I just don't believe that happened. Now, I could always be wrong, but I couldn't imagine that happening. I do like his picture though, with his face hanging out of the car while Conor's on a bike. I have to appreciate that.
Yeah, his Twitter game seems pretty strong. Hopefully, it is his Twitter, or it's him doing the tweets. Because it's been quite funny what's come out so far, and he seems like he's got a good, almost personality to match that scary personality that he is inside the octagon.
Yeah,
I
hopefully
just
we
find
do
it-
see him in 2 weeks.
I just get like a real weird feeling when these Russian fighters just start saying, "I smash him, I smash him, I smash this guy." That just that puts the fear of God into me. I'm like, right, go ahead, by all means.
Yeah, I mean,
Someone said that to me. If I was fighting and some guy said that to me in a press conference, I'm done. Like, I verbally tap out, whatever.
Yeah.
Physically, I'm not fighting. Good luck next week. I'm not doing it. They just maul people.
that's why I had so much admiration for Reece McKee, because I'm sure we all saw, the video of him with the Cage Warriors president Graham, and he just said, "Who is it? Actually, I don't care. I'm taking it." And that's the sort of mindset that you need, and that's why I hope he does get another chance, because he is doing really, really well. So hopefully he gets that chance.
I will say this as well. Like, I know he didn't land a single strike, so it's kind of hard for me to compliment his performance. But he did offer a lot of he was always in the fight to the extent where he was trying to move, he was trying to change position, he was trying to get out of, or get, I was going to say Mokaev, whatever, Chimaev off him, and he just kept trying to change it up and stay in the fight. But this is Kamzat is just too good, too big, too strong.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, before we check out, Reece, what's your predictions? We get predictions for the 2 fights or 3 fights. In fact, we'll put the Luke fight in that as well. How are you seeing this one?
I was very surprised when Luke took this Randy Brown fight, because it didn't really make sense for him. After fighting Nico Price, he probably should have been looking for someone towards the top 10. But that, Randy Brown's always been in good fights, whether he's been on the winning side or the losing side. So for that fight, I'd definitely edge towards Luke. Although I'd actually forgot how big Randy Brown was. I remember Luke yesterday at the face-offs looking up at him. So maybe if Randy can utilise that height, then maybe he can do that. But I see Luke winning that one. As I said earlier, I see Jojo beating Jennifer Maia just down to pure pressure and volume of strikes. And then I see Edmen in the first round. I've made some bold predictions on this channel, and Jay's made some hot takes on his channel over the last 2 videos, and I'm just going to stick with it. I think that Edmen is going to knock Derek Brunson out in the first round within the first 3 minutes.
Ballsy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I made the Nunes Spencer one, and I've never been more wrong in
What
my
did you
entire
say
life.
again? What was that one?
What, for the Nunes Spencer one?
Yeah, do you want to repeat it?
Nah, not really. No, I think it was best left said as it was.
So it might happen in a rematch one day.
Yeah,
That's never happening.
if it does come to that, I know who I'm picking this time. So yeah, that's fine.
And Jay, what's your predictions? Are you along the same lines of that one?
I have Luke winning by stoppage in probably late on, I would say. I could see him just doing enough. He has a lot of power behind him. Solid hands. And Randy Brown, like Bree said, and we spoke as well on it. Randy Brown's always in good fights. He's tough. He's exciting to watch. But I think this will be Luke Hayes' night. And then I have Calderwood winning, and then going on to fight Shevchenko for the title. Trying to maintain that level of consistency. So I think she'll get the job done. And then I will go Derek Brunson by knockout in round 2. How's that, Reece? I see you're Felicia Spencer, and I raise you.
Yeah, but like, come on, like Felicia Spencer was such an out there prediction.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the betting lines are for this fight, but I imagine it's a relatively close fight. I imagine that Edmen is probably like a minus. If I had to guess, like a minus like 220 favorite. I'd be very surprised if Brunson was the favorite going into it.
no, he wouldn't be at all.
But as I said though, like I can definitely see Derek winning. I can definitely see Edmen winning, but I'm just going to side of Edmen because that record that he's chasing.
He
It'd
has
be nice
momentum.
to see it beat. Yeah, he has momentum. Yeah, and I kind of liken it, Derek Brunson, to Robert Whittaker. Like Derek's been there with best of the best. He's been in some absolute wars. He's been there with like Leo Zamachida and Jacare's been knocked out twice by now. So, how much does that take its toll when you've got a fighter like Edmen who's hasn't come out of first round in the UFC apart from once? So, it might come down to momentum. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to head towards that. I think Vicente Luque wins that decision. I think that one's almost guaranteed to be fight of the night now. Obviously, with the loss of one fight and a couple of fights this week, his chances, or their chances, have automatically increased. I think Joanne Calderwood gets a second round submission, and I think Edmen Shahbazyan comes through with a second round TKO as well. I think there's something. Sometimes you see a fight and the stars just align for their, or maybe not their career, but just a point in their period and in their career. It just aligns and everything goes perfectly for him. And I think we see another, similar to Adesanya, we see one of those matches for him. And unfortunately for Derek Brunson, he's on the wrong side of that. But maybe he gets the loser perhaps of Uriah Hall, Romero, or even a Calvin Gastelum matchup.
There's also another big middleweight fight next week with Chris Weidman as well. He's coming back down, and he's going to want to obviously make his way back in towards the rankings. So yeah, it's a good time for middleweight division.
It is, and I will say this on Chris Weidman's behalf: forget about the one against Dominic Reyes at light heavyweight. But in some of the fights he's lost at middleweight, he hasn't been like just getting a beat down. Like you look at him when he fought Jacare, he beat Jacare up big time.
Yeah, he was winning that fight.
Yeah. I thought you looked impressive against Romero. Obviously that spinning heel kick that he never wants to talk about again against Rockhold, that was a detriment to himself, obviously. But I don't think he's looked bad or past it. I think he's looked good and then just been unlucky in some cases. So I'd like to see Weidman get back on a bit of a run.
Yeah, I mean he's lost his last 5 out. He's lost 5 out of his last 6, and I think there's been 3 or 4 of those that have been knockouts. So
yeah,
people are always going to sit there and question like he's finished. I think but as you just said there, like he's a lot of the fights that he's ended up getting knocked out in or just getting like he was doing well in the fights. Especially the fight against Gegard, he was doing really well in that fight against Gegard, and Gegard is such a master of every facet of the game. And Chris Weidman was probably winning that fight before he got caught with the knees by Gegard. But Weidman's still got a big say in his division going forward, as I think he has just been unlucky that and I think that's just the thing with his sport is one punch can end it all, especially when you're fighting up at that weight class as well. The heavy hands on everyone, and that's a fine margins. So
it's a very different. Yeah, it's a very different weight class though since he's been champion.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Yeah,
more and more killers now than there ever was in that division.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he definitely has his work cut out for him. But like we just said, yourself, he's not. To me, he doesn't seem past it. He just seems like he's had bad luck.
Yeah, he's just in a rut, and now it's in facing. I think he's facing Amari Akhmadov. I think he's facing.
Mm-hmm.
It's if he loses this fight, then I think the calls for him to retire will probably be valid, because Chris Weidman's better than Akhmadov in every facet. So he's got to go out there and he's got to put a performance on and make a statement that he is still at the top of the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if it gets finished in that fight, then you've really got to be asking questions.
Yeah,
Be in there anymore. I know I don't know how true they are or how valid they are, but I saw a couple of rumors saying Luke Rockhold's thinking of coming to that division as well. That's another name. He's had a couple bad runs in his past couple fights, but again, he's someone who can mix it up in that top 10.
He is, but I always feel like Luke Rockhold's had half his mind outside the game with all of his fashion stuff like that. I don't think he's been committed to the game for a few years now, going even back before the Romero knockout. So I think it's hard when you've got your mind on other things. I think it's hard to really commit. But if he is committing, then we all know the credentials that Luke's got, despite the memes that's been going on with him over the last few years. Like, he's still one of the best middleweights of all time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. Like, Luke Rockhold has all the ability in the world to do whatever he wants. When he got to when he became champion, fully deserved. He earned every bit of that. He was unlucky with some losses beforehand, especially with the Vitor, with, test positive and stuff like that. But that rise to the title, I couldn't think of a more exciting middleweight at that time. And it just, like Ree said, his head just went out of it, the modeling, the TV shows. Look, if he wants to make money elsewhere, by all means, go ahead. But it just seemed like that caught his attention more, and it took more time away from the gym than anything. And the results speak for themselves then when that happens, and if he is going to be fully committed and hungry, he could store it up in the middleweight division, absolutely.
100%. And obviously, got one last competitor before we finish this, which is Anderson Silva, who's also looking for a fight now. Obviously, his best days are past him, but maybe you could do a Chris Weidman or a Luke Rockhold, maybe a fight of ones that we wish we would have seen 5 years ago, perhaps.
Maybe. I mean, I'd love to see the Bisping trilogy. Just for personal sake, because for me being British, watching Bisping knock out the champion on 2 weeks' notice was arguably one of my best MMA moments ever. But as Jay said earlier, like, the division over the last 5 years has changed so much. As a different type of fight at the top of the division now. So yeah, with Luke and with Chris, like, they both come back. It's going to be interesting to see where they fit into it.
Yeah, it feels like it's almost a pass guard into the division. Obviously, you got Jack Ray Romero at the latter ends of their career, and Silva's probably on that. Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold. It's almost like they're getting almost not pushed out, but their time comes to the end. They've probably got 1 or 2 fights more left in their career. But we've got new kids rising.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm good.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, I know Romero said he wants to fight he wants to have another 10 more fights or whatever, but Romero could be a good fight for Anderson Silva. In terms of age, there's not a lot between them. I think just Romero looks like a chiseled god at the minute. That's the only problem. But that could be a fun fight, because Romero has had, well, I think 1 official title shot. Didn't he miss weight on a couple as well?
Yeah, on the interim and the one against Whittaker, I believe.
He also, yeah.
But that should be by right 3 title shots. So he's had opportunities. So I would imagine it'd take a lot for him to get back there, in terms of how the UFC see it. So why not have some fun with it? Do that.
Will.
I think the Uriah Hall fight will be fun.
Yeah.
In terms of styles. But Anderson Silva would be easily as fun for me.
I think the problem with it's not a problem with you, Romero, but there was not ever any definitive contender in that division. But the division's changed a lot, especially over the last 18 months or 2 years. You've now got the likes of Cannonier, you've got Till, you've got Hermanson. Gastelum, who, despite the 3 losses, is still in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's now a new breed of challenger, and Romero has fell for that, and he's paid the price, and he's missing weight has obviously played a massive part as well. But yeah, as Jay said earlier on, I could watch Romero title fight upon title fight upon title fight, because he's such an enigmatic fighter and such a joy to watch.
It's crazy when you think he's got two discs fused in his neck from a previous injury, and he moves the way he does, and he looks the way he does. At what
He's a freak.
age. And, the fact that he's come out, Joe Rogan questioned me. He said, everyone in Cuba looks like that, especially through the route he's gone with the wrestling team and everything. So it makes you think, how good? What level is he in Cuba, and how good is he in Cuba? Like, what's the level of Yoel Romero? Because that, if there's like a couple levels above him, that's a very scary prospect.
Yeah, I don't like. So I'm kind of getting confused just even trying to think about that. Like, because Romero, wrestling wise, it's one of the biggest mysteries in mixed martial arts as to why Yoel Romero does not wrestle.
Yeah.
Can't understand. Like, he would be a world champion 2 times over by now if he just wrestled. Like, he would. I think that's pretty unanimous. Like, he just doesn't. It's like he uses the wrestling in order to save a round or something like that later in the fight. I'm baffled by it. Now, fair play. Like, he tried to wrestle with Whittaker, and Whittaker handled it pretty nicely. But I felt like even with Adesanya, he just didn't try enough. It's, I don't know. It's a weird one for me.
It's almost as baffling as Justin Gaethje's wrestling. He's another one who never uses it.
Yeah, no one knows, despite his credentials, no one knows just how good Justin Gaethje is at wrestling.
I think we'll find out in his next fight.
Yeah, and I do think we'll find out. Yeah.
That'd be crazy. But yes, I think we're going to wrap up there, guys. The prelims are just starting now with 5 minutes into the card. And yeah, these pre-shows, you guys seem to be loving them. We love doing them. Of course, it's a nice little build up to a Saturday night, a couple of drinks, bit of food perhaps. But yes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Obviously, we've got Modesta's interview coming out tomorrow at 3 p.m. So be put notifications on and make sure you're there to tune in for that one. And we'll see you guys on the next video.